Welcome into Season 5, Episode number 18 of the Outlap F1 Podcast. We are part of the Ship It Studios Podcast Network, and this is the 2023 Canada Canadian Grand Prix Race Review. You've got Andy, and I am joined by Deanna tonight, who has survived the smoke of the Canadian wildfires in New York and come out the other side, I hope. Dee, it's nice to see you. You got rocking your Duke shirt on tonight, so how's it going?
It's good. Yep, I did survive, just barely. That was it was a wild time, and unlike anything I've ever experienced, and just to see things that orange is very bizarre. But it was we survived. We made it on to the other side, and all of my other illnesses, and now we're good to go. So I'm happy to be back.
Well, you could make the case that maybe you were on Mars, because it kind of looked like that through some of the pictures.
Oh, it truly did.
Gosh.
Yes, it was unreal, just unreal.
Woo. But anyway, we're glad to see you on the other side, and we're happy to have you along with us tonight. As always, you can find our show on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, Reddit, and of course YouTube at Outlap F1 Podcast. If you happen to be on YouTube, click the like and subscribe button if you'd like to. It just helps us get our content to you that much quicker. If you're on your favorite Apple Podcast or Spotify apps, please do us a solid. Give us a 5-star review. Again, it will just help us come up a little bit better in searches and get our content to you that much quicker. You can email our show as always, chatnow@outlapf1.com. I realized the last episode I didn't put the .coms in. That will get you to the email. The website, www.outlapf1.com, will get you there. Thank you, as always, to our continued monetary supporters, including Dean Warwick, Yuri Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quentin Warden, Kevin Kelly, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, and, of course, Jonathan Scott. If you'd like to become a member of our Outlap F1 Nation, do us a solid. Look at our show notes and click on our anchor page. $1 or $5 all goes into making the show better. You got to hear the last Spanish review, me doing the recording from the hinterlands of Wisconsin. So it's only because of that type of stuff that we're able to help do that. So thank you very much for all of the continued support. You can check out the good folks at Manscaped, and you can take advantage of our code OUTLAP. That will get you 20% off and free shipping. You can also check out our buddy Vincenzo Landino. He has a shirt line of F1 merch. It's at thef1guy.com. Go check that out. It's good F1 quality merch at not the F1 quality price. So it's good stuff. We would recommend that you check that out. And normally this is the part at which I talk about the Portage Park Development Project and all of the fun associated with that. We just wanted to say thank you to the good folks at the Portage Park Development Project for all of the support. And we probably won't be doing the reads moving forward, but we appreciate all of the support and all the help that they've been able to do for us throughout the last few months. So thank you very much. All right, so that gets us through the particulars. A little bit more efficient that way, I guess. So we will start with our headlines of the day, as we now focus in on the Canadian Grand Prix that was. And Dee, I'll let you kick this off. What you thought?
That's 100 wins from Red Bull, and at this rate, it feels like they're just about to get 100 more in a row. I think this is very clearly, very easily a Max championship with the Red Bull constructors alongside. And there's kind of no doubt about that in my mind.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, my headline is something similar. It was going to be like, stop the presses. Red Bull actually had a bit of an off weekend if you look at everything in its aggregate. But guess what? It still didn't matter. Max was comfortably ahead. Like, he even hit a bird. And the bird got stuck in the brake duct, as, we'll kind of talk about. And it still didn't matter. So Mother Nature can't stop Max Verstappen this weekend. My gosh. The utter dominance yet again by the Red Bulls and Max Verstappen. All right, so we will start as we get into the weekend with the qualifying recap. And let's see if I can actually get the music to play. All right. So back on Saturday in what was a wet and actually fairly wild session with changeable conditions throughout. We said in our preview that the Saturday was going to be wet. That proved to be very true. So going out in P20 in the first session was Joe Granu. P19 was Logan Sargent. P18 was Nick DeVries. P17 was Pierre Gasly. P16 was Yuki Tsunoda. Advancing through to Q2, which was actually the fastest session that actually saw some slick tires. P15 was Valtteri Bottas. P14, Kevin Magnussen. P13 was Lance Stroll. P12, bit of a surprise here, Sergio Checo Perez. P11, another big surprise here, Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. Just missing out on the Q3 shootout. Advancing through to Q3 and the top 10 final shootout from 10 to 1. P10 was Alex Albon. P9 was Oscar Piastri. P8 was Carlos Sainz. P7 was Lando Norris. P6 was Esteban Ocon. P5 was George Russell. P4, Lewis Hamilton. P3, Fernando Alonso, Aston Martin showing off their upgraded package. P2, the shocker of qualifying on the right tires at the right time, that was Nico Hulkenberg. And in P1, with a lap time of 1:25.858, was Max Verstappen. So it was a qualifying of being on the right tire at the right time. You got to give the kudos to the Haas team. They nailed the timing, especially in that third run of being on the inners, being out on the track, and setting a lap time just before Oscar Piastri's red flag. And that allowed Nico Hulkenberg to take a very shocking P2. So you have to go back and you have to say, okay, it's not their best result ever. We obviously saw the Magnussen pole position last year, but that was for a sprint. So this is actually Haas's best Grand Prix starting position ever in the history for them. But Dee, any other thoughts on qualifying?
Pre-penalty, of which there were many.
Yeah, that's true. We got to talk about that too.
I think my other massive highlight was Alex Albon in Q2. The Williams decision to stick him out on softs immediately, and his ability to make it around the track, and then just kind of get heat into those tires over the course of the session. And I just kind of wish qualifying would have started maybe about 15 minutes earlier, so that Q2 could have been Q3. That would have been fun to see a Williams on pole. But that was overall, and we'll talk about the race too, but I think Albon, really impressive weekend.
Yeah, I mean, Williams has brought a ton of updates, and it's kind of gone really kind of under the radar. And, James Vowles, the team principal, he's been really open about how far back Williams really was when he kind of looked at it. And they're like, dude, we're using like simulator equipment and stuff that's like 20 years old, and, it hasn't been updated. And, when everybody realizes, Dorilton comes in and they say, we're going to infuse the team with money. The team gets money. Well, that's great. But you got to build all that infrastructure back up. This is literally a reclamation project, and kudos to them. The upgrades look like they've worked. They've definitely made that car. It's always been good in a straight line. That looks to still be the case. But now it's actually got some tire characteristics to it, which is something we haven't seen from Williams in a long time. So they felt confident enough, one, in Alex Albon to go put him on those soft tires in those conditions. And two, he goes out there. He was the guinea pig. And then, by the time the rest of the grid picked up on it, some got caught out because it was too late because the rain wasn't coming. Yep. Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez basically found themselves caught out on the wrong tire because they were told by their teams, let's get a banker lap in, then we'll come switch you. And by that time, it was too late. And by the end of Q2, the rain shower had moved in and the dry line had basically vanished.
Yep. Yeah. Pretty big disasters from Leclerc and Perez. Ferrari overall, not doing Sainz any favors with telling him where cars were on track. But I also do want to say, I think kind of a separate comment, but still about Williams. James Vowles has been a fantastic addition to that team. And I just haven't gotten a chance to say it. He is the absolute best person when they have cut to the pit wall for commentary. He is incredible. I want him to be on every race. I never want to listen to Horner again. I only want him. He wasn't on this race, but separate point. I just haven't gotten a chance to say that yet. But yeah, I think that was a fantastic strategy call from them. And you contrast that with the absolute disaster at Ferrari.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Leclerc and Sainz begging the pit wall, guys, it's ready for dries, and they're telling them not to do it. It still makes you wonder. We've seen that entire team do a complete overhaul of. We're watching them do an overhaul of staff right now, and it still feels like the Ferrari decision desk takes too long. Who are they talking to? Versus the guys right there in the cars. I don't get it.
Yeah. It's so shocking to me when they choose to listen to their drivers and when they don't. I think this qualifying session, the drivers on the track actually experiencing the conditions, that's when you listen to them. And then I think Ferrari needs to, although they ended up, I think, not bringing Sainz in that, we'll talk about the race strategy later, but when they're in a full race blown strategy, like Sainz and Leclerc, they can't see the full grid, they can't see the gaps where they come into pit, whatever. So that's, I think, where Ferrari needs to take the team a stronger stance. But in a qualifying session where the drivers it's them and the fastest time they can get in those conditions, you listen to the driver in that situation. So I don't understand the leadership there or the thought process. It's just a disaster.
Yeah, and Ferrari's loss, like we talked about, turned out to be Hulkenberg's gain. Guy who was on a lap that I wish I could have seen the finale of was Lando Norris in the wet. He had set 2 green sectors, and then basically his teammate crashes out, causes the red flag. About 30 seconds later, maybe we're talking about a different position on the grid for him, but still, I thought overall that was good strategy just to get him up there. Good for Esteban Ocon. Alpine's had kind of a rough go in some of the mixed changeable conditions. Gasly had himself a horrible Friday and a horrible Saturday. So good for them
Saturday
to be up there.
His fault. I think he was on a lap before it got impeded, which that just
I mean, he had
his fate.
several run-ins with one Ferrari who just happened to be in the worst possible place you could put a car, right at the end of that chicane there. And for whatever reason, he thought that was the sweet spot of pulling offline. This was the grid pre-penalty. The post-qualifying penalties were quite a few. Carlos Sainz definitely got nailed. He ended up taking a grid penalty. We saw, who else?
Stroll
Hulkenberg got, the feel-good story ends with Hulkenberg. Too fast under one of the red flags. This is what I like to call the Jensen Button at Coda penalty, because that's the first time I'd ever heard about it. I didn't know you could do that, but I guess didn't respect the delta enough. And with these stewards, apparently if you put a pinky over the line, you are going to get a penalty this weekend, especially in the race.
But also Stroll, Tsunoda had penalties for impeding. Also Stroll, another disaster in qualifying, right there behind Leclerc and Perez, I'd say, in that car. Should not be doing that, but that is a Lance Stroll specialty this season, it appears.
Yeah, that's another one that, like, his Sunday turned out to be a little bit better, but his Saturday, he's got a good car. We know that. We know the car is good, and he's Lance Strolling all over the place.
But his dad says double podiums. Or something like that.
Well, got some work to do, apparently. So, anyway. But again, up at the front, Max Verstappen, again, regardless of how it seemed like he was actually in a little bit of peril there, a little bit with the changeable conditions, but it turned out not to even matter. Again, he turns out to be like 2 seconds faster. That Red Bull just completely hooked up. So, once again, Max is on the pole. All right, so we will turn over to the Sunday action. We'll start with our back markers, and we'll have to start with the non-classified runners. That would be Logan Sargent, who DNF'd with an engine failure, and George Russell, who binned it on lap 12, managed to somehow get it back to the pits, which is a feat of amazement that I didn't see coming. Ran around for a while, but ultimately had to retire the car. P18 was Nick DeVries, who got into a bit of a scuffle with Kevin Magnussen and ended up on an escape road forever. And yet there was no safety car. There was no virtual safety car. And both guys managed to find reverse and get going. So I guess all's well that ends well there. P16 was Zhou Guanyu. P15, the darling of qualifying, Nico Hulkenberg, the safety car really screwed up his race, so that was kind of the end of the day for him. And P13, we will talk about this penalty in a little bit. I have to get ready for it. Lando Norris. P9 on the road. I've gone and looked at this thing a couple times. I have some thoughts. But D, any big takeaways from the back markers?
I think other than Lando, who I'm sure we'll get to, De Vries and Magnussen, that was just disaster. And then, yeah, Russell, I don't know how he dragged that thing along back to the pits and then drag it along as long as he did. I think he made it all the way up to 8th from last at one point. But then the retirement, which is just a little unfortunate, because that would have been, I think, kind of classed as a really good drive. I mean, obviously his fault for putting in the wall, so grain of salt. But to drag that car around in that state that it was in for that long, somewhat impressive.
Well, you have to wonder what it was, if it was a temperature thing or save the engine. I figure it probably had to be something with the cooling that wasn't functioning right, or brakes that were going to melt on him, or something to that point, because up until that point, he was on pace, and he was, P8 at the time, when they called him in to retire. So,
I also, sausage curbs just probably shouldn't be there. That's what kind of launched him into the air in the first place, which, again, driver, you take those consequences, but those sausage curbs have done some damage to a lot of different drivers in the past, and I don't understand why we're still using them. But anyway.
That's a great point. From that, between that and the oddball barrier at turn 1 that, we thought was going to be a problem. We mentioned it on the preview, and then it survived the first driver meeting. It didn't survive the second one on Saturday. And then they basically opened up this little narrow strip. Now, luckily on Sunday, it didn't prove out to be of consequence at all. But still, there was some odd track marshaling. And then if you happen to watch the Friday, some odd circuit issues with the power and the CCTV. We didn't have free practice 1, and then we had the 90-minute free practice 2 that was shortened because then the rain came, and then that ended all that. So very wonky kind of weekend up in Canada, but I guess we'll leave the back markers there. I am going to save my Lando Norris penalty rant for the awards. We'll come back to that. And I think if you've listened to the show, you probably know what's coming. Anyway, so we'll move on into the midfield. And in P12, we find Pierre Gasly. P11 was Oscar Piastri, just missing out on the points. P10 was Valtteri Bottas. P9, Lance Stroll did manage to get himself up in the points on Sunday. P8, Esteban Ocon, wobbly rear wing and all, did manage to bring it home in P8. P7, probably my star of the race other than the frontrunners. That would be the Williams of Alex Albon, matching Williams' best points finish since I think it was 2019 Hungary, when one Nicholas Latifi managed to score a P7. Good old number 6 there. Latifi reference on the Canada Review for Team Canada. Hey, P6, Sergio Perez recovering from a difficult Saturday and coming back through probably as far as he was going to get. The two Ferraris managed to actually get their strategy pretty much right down the middle, I would say, on Sunday. They recover to P5 and P4 respectively, with Carlos Sainz finishing P5 and Charles Leclerc finishing P4. So, I guess if we're going to yell at Ferrari for what they do on Saturday, you got to praise them for what they do Sunday. They managed to leave the cars out on the safety car stop, got track position, and made those mediums last.
Yeah, and that was I think, kind of broken clock, right twice a day kind of thing. At that point in time, I think everybody was screaming that was the wrong decision, but they stayed out, and luckily, I think probably stayed out as long as they did because of at least Sainz saying, "Leave me out, please." So they had the pace at the end. They were both kind of in no man's land. Ferrari did make a strong stance on the Sainz is not going to attack you situation, which I know that Leclerc's are number 1, but I don't know that they've said it that emphatically recently. So that was somewhat interesting. But yeah, I think it ended up being a good recovery from 10th and 11th on the grid to 4th and 5th. And they really weren't under challenge at all from Perez behind. But they also weren't going to get anywhere near Hamilton and, and Alonso. So I think that's still that they're the fourth best car on the grid, comfortably right now.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of saw kind of a reordering of kind of where you thought everybody kind of was, even though Ferrari have brought some updates to their car. It still looks like it is an unfinished, I would call it an unfinished symphony at this point. It's not all correlating and working as well as they would all like it, but I thought they probably rescued, this is probably as good of a result as you could have hoped for, given where they were each starting, given how the early laps went. Leclerc being actually stuck behind Norris, I thought was going to be a thing. And then the safety car comes out, and then that, the whole shuffle there. And like I said, the call to leave them out, which was going to get panned. Everybody was ready. The keys were, the fingers were on the keys, and everybody was ready to lambast another Ferrari missed decision. But yeah, they managed to keep the life in the medium tires. I mean, it made them last for something like 40 some laps, or 35, 40 laps at least before they finally brought them in. And they did what that overcut had to do, which is build up enough of a gap, and they were able to do it.
And also, I would give a shout out to Sainz at the beginning for making that overtake back on Perez. That definitely salvaged his race, because after that, everybody was stuck in that train.
Yeah. So speaking of the leader of one of the trains, we have to talk good things about Alex Albon, who Williams hung him out. The only driver to make the one stop work. He manages to make it work. Good calls on Saturday, really good call on Sunday. The key to this sometimes is just plain track position. And if your car is good enough in a straight line here in Canada, it's really hard to pass, as Ocon found out, as Bottas found out, and as Lando Norris found out.
Yeah, I'm kind of shocked just overall there weren't a couple more people that tried that one stop with the kind of early stop in the beginning and then going all the way, because of how those DRS trains were shaping up and how difficult it was to pass. And you could see that from early on. But so many people switched to the two stop. So I like once again, the confidence in the team has in Albon to let him do that. And I think kind of that performance overlap after lap. I think they talked about on the broadcast, the exit he was getting out before the straight, to be able to kind of park it on the apex and go, and hold off whoever was behind him, like Stroll, Ocon, all of them.
It ended up being it was Ocon for the longest
impressive.
time. It was Ocon for the longest time. Then Stroll caught the back of that. It was Ocon, Bottas, and then Norris for a while, and then Stroll caught the back of that, and then Piastri caught the back of that train. So I mean, at one point it was Albon and literally 6 cars behind him, and like I said, he manages to bring it home. Awesome result for Williams. They leap up actually in the constructors quite a bit because of that, and take their, that's 6 points. That's a big day for them.
That may be about what they've scored in the last couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. And this was on merit. I mean, there was no rain. There was no, nothing weird about it. It was just good strategy that got him there. So good on Williams for their Sunday performance. All right, so we will get now into the podium. And the podium was P3, Lewis Hamilton, P2, Fernando Alonso, and P1, are we surprised at this point, Max Verstappen. Apparently, you needed to have multiple world championships to make the podium. There were lots of them on the podium. They were all very cordial with each other, I thought, in the cool-down room, which was interesting to see, probably because they realized they weren't really battling very much with one another. Although the Alonso-Hamilton, there was some good on-track action between the two of them, but Max just looked like he managed his race and brought it home.
I think Alonso Hamilton, that was probably the most excitement we got, or like that kind of like tense feeling you got throughout the race. I think Hamilton getting passed on the first lap, and then Alonso getting back past him later on in the race, but they were always pretty close, and it seemed a couple times that Hamilton was maybe going to have the pace there at the end, especially with Alonso nursing a couple issues. So yeah, and I think overall, I mean, they ended up about 9.5 seconds behind Verstappen, plus I think probably about 5 seconds for the safety car, or from before the safety car. So I mean, it's a slight improvement from 15 seconds behind to from other than about what 30 has been the other races.
Yeah, I mean,
So
you could look at it and you could say, well, okay, if Fernando doesn't have all of the issues, is it maybe a better performance? And maybe we just didn't see the true potential of the Aston car. We know they brought a plethora of updates here. And so that will be something to watch as we get into the next couple rounds. What do those upgrades actually give them? Not one, in the battle with Mercedes, which is really where the fight is right now. And two, do they even cross into the Verstappen hemisphere of competitiveness at this point, of the season? And the other part of it was, I look at Max's day, and he really didn't have all that great of a day. I mean, he was by himself. He was
almost threw himself into the wall too.
Almost threw himself in the wall. Literally had to knock himself back awake, apparently, because he was just, out for a Sunday drive. Hits the bird early, and the bird didn't do anything. I did see a tweet from a Red Bull news site that said that apparently they had to remove the carcass out of it. It was kind of quite nasty at the end. But again, the bird didn't overheat the brakes. I mean, you see this type of thing happen to any other car. It's instant retirement.
Gonna explode, yeah.
Yeah, and things explode, and it's a fiery, shimmering thing going down the, trying to hit the other groundhogs. But here, it seemed like there was. This was probably a chink in the Red Bull armor, and it still didn't matter because there was just that much more underneath it.
I mean, I thought it was crazy with probably about 40 laps to go. Crofty says that Max had led the last 200 laps in a row since some mid-time in Miami. It's just, I just don't know when we'll get that development gap down. How long is that going to take? Is it going to be next year? I don't know. It's not going to be this season. So
the only chance I see is in Alonso. Maybe, and the race I keep thinking of is, I was thinking of Monaco. That didn't happen. Aston Martin made the decision to consolidate P2, and they were happy with that. The next race that I could see them maybe having a legit shot, just where the Red Bull car might not be as good, it might be Hungary, because it's more of a karting track. It's a slower overall lap time. There's not a big long straight that would suit the Red Bull car, but somebody's going to have to put Max in a box to say, okay, I'm either going to wreck you, or we're either both wreck, or you're going to back out of it. And nobody's been able to even try to do that yet this season. Yeah. So until something that happens, I don't see it either.
No, and I mean, I think honestly though, Mercedes probably has the best shot, but they're going to probably have to sacrifice one of their drivers to just kind of get in the way of Max. But I don't think as competitive as those two are that they would do that. But Stroll's nowhere to be found half the time for Alonso to help him in those situations. So
yeah,
I feel like they're both kind of fighting with one hand tied behind their back, and Max can just do just about anything. And he can react to all the calls that they make. They are fully just in the passenger seat when they're making strategy decisions at this point. Because it's just that car and him together. It's just way too dominant.
Yep, but wish we had better things to report on that. But
that's where we stand.
That's kind of where we stand 9 rounds in. But
it feels 2020 reminiscent. And
yeah, I mean, to me, this reminds me, and I've said it many times before. This reminds me of 2013 Vettel, where it was just there were but with that battle, there were other fast cars that just couldn't ever put it together to match him. But here, it's if you don't get him on the first lap, it's over, and nobody wants to sacrifice the overall race to try and go for the win, which is what you would have to do. You have to get track position on him, and you have to make him mad enough to maybe make a mistake. And nobody's done that. And until somebody wants to try, and we'll, again, we'll see. There are other tracks. Silverstone might be more interesting. We're going to the Red Bull Ring, where Red Bull doesn't necessarily always win. So, that could be a bogey track for them. But, this season it may not seem to matter. But again, where I'm focused is I think Hungary is probably the next best shot, unless there's something mechanical happens, unless there's something that freak happens in the car that causes it not to finish. But right now, I don't see anybody coming close.
Nope.
Well, on that Debbie Downer note, I guess we'll leave this review here. So we'll take a quick break. We'll pay a couple bills. We'll come on back. We'll look at where the standings are, and not surprising, Red Bull's got some dominance here. We'll then open it up to your opinions on what you saw this week in the fan email segment. We did get some really good feedback from this race. We'll talk about awards. I'll probably get a little bit red-faced when we talk about the Rubbish Award. You probably all know what that's coming, but we'll get there when we get there. And welcome back to Season 5, Episode number 18 of the Outlap F1 podcast. We are reviewing the Canadian Grand Prix. We just got wrapped up with that. And now we are going to get into our driver and team standings. Dee, let you do the drivers, and I'll come in with the teams.
All right, so Max Verstappen once again extends his lead, and he is on 195 points. In second is Perez on 126, but catching him in third is Fernando Alonso on 117, and Lewis Hamilton in fourth on 102. Then jumping back, we have Carlos Sainz in fifth with 68, followed closely by Russell in sixth with 65, and then Leclerc in seventh with 54, Stroll in eighth with 37, Ocon in ninth with 29, and Pierre Gasly rounds off the top 10 with 15 points.
All right, and the team standings, for the most part, largely unchanged with one significant difference, but Red Bull Racing Powertrains, again, continuing to build their lead. They are on 321 points. Second place is Mercedes. They are up to 167. A bit more clear of the Aston Martins. They check in P3 with 154 points. Fourth place, pretty much where they seem to be right now, that would be Ferrari. They're on 122 points. Fifth place is Alpine, up to 44. Sixth place is McLaren, who remain on 17. Seventh place is Alfa Romeo, who jump up to 9. Eighth place, Haas Ferrari. They check in with 8 points. Ninth place, the mover of the weekend, Williams, from the solitary point that we've been giving them all year long. They now jump up. They get 6 big points today. They jump up to 7 points and move up to P9 in the constructors, and that leaves AlphaTauri, Red Bull Racing Powertrains, only on 2 points. But again, all teams scoring points. But as you can see, the disparity between one Red Bull Racing Powertrain and the other is quite a bit.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. And we're getting to the point where Max could take 2 races off, not even be there, could break his leg, take 2 races off, take a month off, and still be leading the championship, even if Perez scored maximum points. Yikes. Yikes. Wow. Anyway, so that's enough of our opinions on the Canadian Grand Prix. We will now open it up to our favorite segment of the night, the fan email segment. Some great interaction. Thank you to everybody who interacted with us on Twitter throughout the weekend. Dee, as James would say if he was here, it's your time to shine.
All right, so starting with Rachel Fleming, she says, firstly, what a great weekend by Alex Albon, done so much right. But I think the Red Bull group needs to make some decisions about driver lineups. Firstly, I would like them to swap Yuki and Max, but that's not going to happen. So, firstly, another dreadful race by Nick DeVries. I know AlphaTauri is not a good car, but this cannot continue in the long term. If he doesn't improve in mid-season, I can see him being dropped completely. The other issue is Sergio Perez, who has clearly gone backwards. Max gets pole and leads every single lap, and he cannot get out of Q2. I don't think this will happen until the end of the season, but he might be dropped or retire. Only Hamilton and Alonso have been in F1 longer. And I wonder if Red Bull might go after, sorry Andy, Lando Norris. However, they might just decide to keep Perez since Max has won the title, and it makes no difference to them since he wins the constructor on his own anyway. You want to start?
There's a lot going on here, but thanks, Rachel, once again for as always being right when the race ends. I don't even have to put the tweet out. She's always good with the DMs, having a good coherent thoughts here. it looks like we're trying to talk a little bit about silly season, so we can get a little silly here. Nick DeVries, I think, is clearly under pressure. Nick DeVries, and I'm hearing some rumblings about Logan Sargent, although I don't think they're going to switch either. I don't know if, Red Bull being Red Bull, they may pull the trigger on DeVries, which I wouldn't agree with if they did. I'd love to see these guys at least get a season under their belts, and let's see where this pans out. The interesting one is Sergio Perez, who since, the win and, since he had the shot in, a few rounds ago to maybe get back into this thing and maybe make it a championship. And it looks like once that started, he can't get a result to save his life lately. And P6 is not going to do it for you. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know that I don't think Red Bull have a problem with Perez right now. I think they're getting exactly what they want out of him right now. But, at some point, if they were to get a challenge from another constructor, that will then probably come more into the spotlight. With respect to the Lando rumors, if that's going to happen, it's going to happen in 25 or 26. That contract that he signed, it seems not to have a whole lot of exit clauses in it. So if that's what's going to happen, then it's going to happen there. And if McLaren can't make the car right by then, that's the ticking time bomb. That's why they made all the moves that they made now to try to get the car right for 24, 25, 26 to try to hopefully keep Lando in the fold. I don't know that he would want to go to Red Bull and be the second gunner to Max, but, maybe it's the grass is greener on the other side type thing. I can't speak for him there.
Yeah, I think, so starting with Red Bull, I think they keep Perez. I think Perez it's rare, but on his day, he can match and sometimes beat Max, especially on the street circuits. That's where he seems to shine, and it was close towards the beginning of the season. Obviously, it's gapped open now, but I think when you kind of look back at the Hamilton-Bottas relationship, I definitely think Perez is a step above where Bottas was. But I think this is a good relationship a decent relationship between Max and Perez. Perez does a good enough job, I think, overall, where it's not hurting them in the slightest. I don't think there's really a reason to shake all of that up at the moment. As far as AlphaTauri goes, I think DeVries and Sargent at the current track that they're on, I also agree they deserve a full season. It doesn't look great. My personal dream, and very silly, but I think very reasonable, it would be to replace DeVries with Alex Palou, who won this weekend very convincingly after throwing it into the wall, and has been doing a very impressive job, and I love him a lot, and I really think he deserves a chance. Anyway, so doing something like that,
I'll stump for you there. Having seen that guy in action, he's the goods.
Oh God, and I he's been testing for McLaren, and I don't know, because he'll probably not be in that seat as long as, now bringing up Norris. I think Norris will see it out until the next contract. I don't know, I could see Norris maybe making I don't know if he would do this, but it would be a similar Lewis Hamilton type move and jumping to Audi in 26, and just risking it all. But I think why did I just forget his name? Who's the team principal
Seidel?
Or not? Seidel.
Andreas Seidel.
After him moving that way, if they seem to be on a positive trajectory and with more money coming in there, maybe that's an option in the future. I don't think he would want to be a number 2 driver to Max. I just can't see that happening.
I always thought that if Lando was gonna jump anywhere, it's gonna be when Lewis retires, and he's just gonna slot right into that Mercedes because he's been driving Mercedes power for a number of years now. And I
feel like the Russell Norris, that would be somewhat contentious as well.
Oh, I'm sure it would be contentious, but Toto has not had a problem with two guys going at it before. I mean, he managed the whole Hamilton-Rosberg thing for a very long time, and I think they would. I think they're in for as many wins as they could get, and if they're both fast guys, that's the best. I think the best way that they could do it.
Yeah, I agree. Something about Red Bull, it just doesn't feel like he would be there. I just can't envision Norris at Red Bull. That just doesn't.
No, I think he's too strong of a personality, and he doesn't owe Red Bull's whole thing is having guys that owe them for their career. That's where they wield their power. They wield their power from that driver academy. They put more guys into F2 and F3, and they all owe Red Bull a big chunk because they fund them. They fund them throughout their junior careers. So when they get to Red Bull, the last thing they want to do is question the likes of Christian Horner or question the likes of spacing on the name, Helmut Marko. But, they're not going to want to do that. So you bring in Norris, who would be a very strong personality, and I think he'd get along fine with Max. And I know Norris could play a team game if he needs to, but Norris wants to win a world championship, and that would get contentious, I think, really quickly. And Norris wouldn't owe anything to Red Bull. There'd be no way for Red Bull to counteract and try to make it better for Max if that's where they still wanted to be. And none of these results tell you that it's going to be anything other than that.
But I also feel like that's been Max's team for the better part of 5-6 years.
Right.
It's truly Max's team. I just can't see Norris wanting to step into that, because I wouldn't see that dynamic shifting in any way, shape, or form, even if, it would have to be kind of over the long term if Norris consistently was outperforming Max, where at least at Mercedes, I think there is kind of that balance there between George and Lewis right now. That has historically been Hamilton's team, but they all know he's going to retire, so they have to kind of look younger. But I don't think George has been quite strong enough for the entire kind of garage to flip to being like, that's their guy. So we'll see.
That's why I think that's the most fascinating dynamic, because I don't know who the next Mercedes junior guy is.
My other thought would be like Ocon, and then that kind of being, though, a clearly number 2 kind of relationship.
Oh, bring him back in? Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting to see if Alpine, and then that, of course, is going to be where Alpine in 3 years. So, which is a huge question mark. So
who knows? There's a lot.
Fascinating.
I think it's probably going to stay relatively stable the next couple years, because a lot of those guys are on long contracts. But 26, I think, is going to be a massive, massive reshuffle.
The middle of 25, the summer break of 25. I don't think we're posting our Hungaroring review until 2 days later. So in case we do another thing where we say something is going to happen and completely mess it up, we'll leave it there. But it's interesting things to think about. I do think there is going to be some mega swapping amongst. I don't know that this silly season is going to be quite like we had last year, but I do think there will come a point at which we'll get some reshuffling. Maybe some of these guys who are basically at the back
and move around. Throw Leclerc in the mix as well.
Yeah.
If the situation does not get better. And then you're looking at Leclerc, Norris, those are probably going to be the top 2 that would be open to moving. Perez at that point, obviously not going to be one of those top tier guys, but like another big name, like moving to maybe number 1 position at a smaller team. Something like that. And then, what do you do? Somebody like Ocon, hopefully Stroll will be gone by that point. You'll probably have vacancies with Alonso and Hamilton retiring, I would think, by 26. It's just going to be chaos.
Yeah. So good things to look forward to. If not this year, it's coming. Anyway, so next up, we've got Dave Doherty.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that was only on one question.
But it was a good question. So that's what you get.
Fantastic question, Rachel.
Yes.
So, Dave Doherty asked your thoughts on Albon's race.
I think we said it earlier. I thought it was great that they, 1, had faith in him to hang him out on that strategy. 2, the fact that he executed it, even though he didn't really believe in it. And 3, that takes it's super hard to do that strategy. You're trying to save every inch of tire while defending from 5 cars behind you. So the driver of the day, other than Max, is for sure Alex Albon.
Oh, 1,000%. I fully agree. And again, I think that Q2 session as well was massively impressive. So just great weekend from him. Okay, so next weekend, weekend. What? Next question.
Well, we have the formula and the weekend. The weekend did not email us, unfortunately.
No, sadly. So the formula says, "Hey folks, I'll keep it brief this weekend. I went to the Indy race, so I didn't catch every detail of the F1 race this weekend. Can you do your best to explain this consistent and gargantuan difference in pace and race results between Alonso and Stroll at the moment? It's baffling. Truly is." You want to start?
Yeah, I mean, there are days when we all shake our heads at that. I've tried to give Stroll kind of the benefit of the doubt and say, I think he drives to as good as the car. Well, the car has gotten a lot better, and we're still not seeing good results. And I would have thought this weekend with the changeable conditions, that's where he's kind of, when he's flashed, that's where he's flashed. And so I don't know if it's just too much pressure, driving for your dad, family dynamic. I'm sure he's hearing it left, right, and center wherever he goes all the time. So I kind of feel for him in that respect. But the other fact of the matter is, it's just Fernando Alonso. Fernando Alonso's a savant when it comes to driving ability. I mean, you put him in whatever type of car you want, the guy is just fast. And when he was with McLaren, I used to give him 2 or 3 tenths easy in a qualifying session just for him being him. He's that good, and I think that's really what it is.
Yeah, this is Stroll. I mean, especially the qualifying has been bad, and I just think, more so in recent years, Alonso is highlighting how far behind Stroll is. At least, I think he's done okay. He's held his own. He's had a couple kind of flash of the pan moments with a couple podiums and a pole position. But when you look on the balance of his entire career, it's just not good enough. I mean, anybody else would have been gone years ago. So I think this is time. It has to be time. I know it's his son, but you got to get rid of him. And because, I mean, Alonso, he wants to keep racing, but I don't think he has more than, let's say, about 3 years, maybe. You got to get somebody who's going to be the future of that team in there now, where they can learn from Alonso at this stage. And it's just not Stroll. So I think they really need to start kind of having an eye towards the future and getting somebody else in that seat.
I mean, it will be interesting when Felipe Drugovich, who, oh, by the way, is the most nonchalant or ever talked about winner of F2, will get his FP1 drive and see what he can do with that Aston Martin car. If he's outshining Lance Stroll in that, there will be some pressure a-coming as Aston Martin try to build this thing out. And the one thing that they need to build is they need to build the next people to be in their cars afterwards. And I think it's going to start with Drugovich.
Yep. Fully agree. All right. So next up, I also didn't read the last part of the formulas question. Also, I love today's cool down room chatter. Sometimes it's a bit awkward, but not today. Yeah, it was nice just to see everybody getting along.
Yes, right. I like that. I like that idea. Let's all get along. If only all of the fan bases would take the direction from the
so
drivers.
Nice.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Yes.
Although I think this whole season, from the kind of interpersonal drama, is going to definitely slow down because everybody knows that Max is winning this. So I think that takes a lot of the pressure and anxiety out of it for everybody. So it's just a lot easier to just chit chat.
No, I mean it does. For all but one segment of the fandom that's out there that keeps regurgitating the same point. But at this point, it's just like, okay. I mean, I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you wake up in the morning and go, okay.
This is the battle I want to fight today.
Yes. I don't know, but whatever. You do what you do.
Yeah. All right, next up, Quentin Warden says, F1 was decent, happy with Ferrari having a clean weekend and having good pace. Could have been a podium with a better quali. Kept an eye on IndyCar too, but I'll have to rewatch it closer. Palou is really starting to separate himself, though. Yes, I will take this opportunity to talk about Palou. I did watch this entire race, but without the volume. But just in general, Palou, to pull up the gap that he has in this championship out, and it is definitely the most competitive championship probably in the world, for him to be doing what he's doing is just so impressive. And I think kind of just the calmness and way that he can go about with such precision a race weekend is just so incredible. And I'm his number one fan.
I mean, like I told you, I'll stump for him too. just having seen some of it in person when I went to the Indy GP, and that was a wild, kind of crazy, weird strategy race that you didn't know was going to be. And there he was, 16 seconds out in front at the end of the day, while everybody else was falling over themselves trying to get on the podium. Was a hell of an effort. A hell of an effort in this race too. I didn't get a chance to
imagine if he didn't get taken out in the pit lane by who was it?
Dixon.
I don't remember. No.
No. Peterson. Is it no?
No. Rinus VeeKay.
Oh, VeeKay. VeeKay,
yeah.
who's made a habit of doing that this season, by the way.
Yep. Had he not gotten taken out of the pits in the pit lane and the 500, I think he got all the way back out to 5th, but that may have been a win as well. So, anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is
have an F1 shot just because it would be fun to see.
Well, I'm pretty sure he's going to get another FP1 drive. I know he tested a McLaren car in Hungary. The thing that's going to be interesting is he's a free agent at the end of this year. This was the year, if you remember, all the contract stuff. Will he go to McLaren? Does he go to McLaren? Felix Rosenqvist is not doing anything into that seat. And sorry, we've broken out the Outlap IndyCar podcast, but, sometimes we have to do this.
There's a lot more going on over there.
Yeah, exactly. There's a ton to talk about over there, too. Hang on. If you want to know what we're doing now, let's see, because I have this in here. Might as well play it. Oh, of course, it's not going to work now. Dang it. I had my theme music and everything. Stupid thing. Anyway. All right. It'll start playing right in the middle as I'm talking. Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Of course. But anyway, to get back to your point, yeah, Rosenqvist is not doing anything to really hold on to that seat. Nope. That's the one that he was only on a 1-year deal. We knew they had all the contract stuff with Ganassi. I don't know why Palou would want to leave Ganassi, but if he has F1 aspirations, that seems to be the way to go. We'll have to see what happens there.
That would be, I think, Rossio Ward Palou would be a pretty insane trio to have. The McLarens have always, at least the past few races, granted Rosenqvist has had a couple fun adventures. They've been on the track close to each other basically the whole time, and then especially during the 500 and everything. So they're getting better. They're getting up there with the top teams, I think. So I don't know. Maybe you jump over. It'd be fun to see what he could do with that car.
See if I can play this one more time. There we go. Love that.
Just fully transitioned to IndyCar.
Excuse to play with buttons is also fun. On a Grand Prix that was a little, not totally boring, but left a little bit to be desired. Let's put it that way. Yep. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you on Palou being right now, I think, the best in the business in IndyCar. If he wins a second championship, that he's won anything he wants to win. If he wants to come up and take a shot at F1, I think he's as good as anybody right now. And that could be a wild card into all this driver silly season that we're talking about too.
I think somebody has to has to try it, because I just he's what, probably 24, 25 maybe at the absolute most. Yeah. And to have that kind of experience at that age, yes, it's not technically through the F2, F3 tree, but I just think his mentality alone is worth the shot. It's just so impressive. Anyway, okay. I'm good. I can move on. All right. Next up, Sheik2411 says, pretty boring in the top 3. The season is over from my standpoint. The only thing that made me happy was when the broadcasters are focusing more heavily on the other mid-pack fights. It's nice to see, but I think Red Bull has the car sealed in for one more year. Yeah, I also I just feel like Crofty struggled today or yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, him and Kravitz were kind of almost going at it a couple of times where I'm like, what is going on here? It was a strange dynamic. It
sounded like he was struggling to find things to talk about too, or little phrases to say. It was weird.
All I would say is that's a tough job. That is a very tough job, and he does it. And to me, Crofty can be bad at the whole rest of the broadcast. His money time to shine is right after that music plays, and he gets you ready, and and he does incredible. The intro.
Yeah,
he's number one at that. Like, you could just box that up every time he does that. It's just you're pumped. No matter, even if the race sucks, you're still pumped at that moment.
Yep. And he does have some incredible kind of first and last lap calls.
Yes.
So, but some of the stuff in the middle, sometimes you just get a little lost in the sauce, I think.
True.
But
true.
But yeah,
I mean,
at least
it's going to be interesting to see who's going to be the new Brundle, because you can obviously see they've been kind of auditioning Jenson Button and
Karun.
Karun Shandok and a couple other people to kind of be in that seat. I think it's ultimately Jenson Button's if he wants it. The question is, what does JB want to do? And I think he's probably the best for it. But, we know that Brundle is not going to be long for doing all that travel for very much longer.
Yep, I think that's probably going to happen in the next couple of years at the most, unfortunately. But I think I'm Team Jenson.
Yep, I would tend to agree. But I mean, to the question that actually spawned this entire conversation, I'm pretty sure the top three was pretty boring. I mean, I love looking at midfield fights. That's always good. It was good that that's kind of where they focused. And that's where really most of the action was, who's going to finally break the DRS train. And it took some dive bomb moves. I mean, Lando made a couple really nice moves there at the end. Unfortunately, too little too late for him, as it turned out.
A good one on his teammate, although...
Yeah.
Probably pushed both of them out of the points at that point, though.
It kind of did. Yeah, well, he didn't know he had the penalty then.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And I was like rooting, like, come on. Like, I figured Oscar was a little bit gun shy considering he crashed out of Q2 or crashed out of Q3 on Saturday. So he wasn't apt to want to really push the envelope. But that was like, he'll learn from that, and then hopefully you'll watch his teammate what he did, and like the hairpin was the place to, if you were going to make a move, that was where you were going to do it. So,
yep. Well,
but anyway,
are you ready?
All right. Yep. Time for me to get ready here. All right. So we will now thank you for everybody who contributed to the fan email segment. I think it's actually been the highlight of the podcast to this point. I think us pontificating about kind of race is one thing, but this was a good discussion. I quite enjoyed it. So we will now move into our awards, and we will start with the rubbish. Dee, I'll let you go first, and then I'm ready to go.
All right. I was debating putting like the broadcast or whatever. This is gonna probably just come up twice. But it has to go to Ferrari. It always goes to Ferrari, and it's just tradition. I think the whole dynamic between the pit wall and the drivers is just a disaster. Whatever leadership is going on there is, I mean, maybe we'll turn it around, but it's not looking so hot, because you can comparing what Fred Vasseur has done versus James Vowles has done at Williams in the same amount of time. I think you can really see the changes at Williams, and I don't see a change at all at Ferrari. So I don't know. It's a mess. That qualifying was a mess. I think they kind of were a bit lucky on that strategy call more than anything. And they made the best out of their normal kind of blunders as well. So that could have potentially been a podium for them, but clearly there are some issues that still need to be resolved.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I will talk about my Ferrari issues in the next award. Shocking. As that's kind of what it's there for. But my rubbish will have to go out to kind of the stewards in general for this weekend. I got some of the impeding penalties on Saturday. I didn't know that every one of them was a mega impeding, but okay, that's fine. But we go to Sunday, and I have watched this sequence about 6 times tonight because I kept trying to find where I go, that's the Norris penalty. That's clearly where this is. I got it. I understand it, and I'm okay with it. And I can't get there. I've plugged in F1 TeamViewer and looked at his telemetry and re-listened to all the team radio to try to figure out, like, did they tell him to kind of encode, slow down? Again, didn't hear it, didn't see it, don't understand it. But I mean, the only view that it makes sense is if you like where they say he got the penalty was in the hairpin and right after that, but that was literally right after they said the safety car was deployed. He was coming into the hairpin when they actually threw it. So he goes around the hairpin, and then everybody naturally slows down. And he's slow for maybe 3 seconds, and then he's back up over 100 kilometers an hour. So I don't understand the penalty. I guess it is what it is. But here comes the rant part. If you're going to say that that's a penalty, fine. I'll grant you that. But that shit better get called like that on other teams moving forward. If that's the standard we want to go with, I'm totally cool. I'll take the 5 seconds. It's only 2 points, not going to really make or break the year. But that stuff better be called like that for other teams this year. And if I see anybody else doing that and it doesn't get called, it's just going to drive me crazy because why this above anything else? I didn't understand it.
What I can't understand is why people have definitely gotten a penalty for backing other people up to try to like help with the double stop. Why unsportsmanlike?
Right.
What did that have to do with anything?
Yeah.
Like why we call it this? Because this is a penalty that's been called before. Why did we switch which rule we were calling it under? I don't know. That was bizarre.
Yeah. I didn't get it. It the only one that looks, and I'll admit to it looking bad, is if you look at it on the driver tracker. If you actually look at the sequence, you can see Piastri getting a gap. But according to the radio messages, he was just told safety car. They both slowed down. Piastri speeds up a little bit quicker than Lando does, and then it's literally only for like 3 seconds. He's at like 60 kph, and then he floors it, and the gap is what it was. And they didn't tell him to box until he gets right up against the pit lane. So, I mean, again, it may be worthy of a penalty according to the rules. I'm not going to say, let's appeal or any of that other crap. But if you're going to call it that way, you better call it that way for other guys because everybody else has done the same stuff.
Great.
All right. Done with my rant. All right. So we'll move on to the analysis paralysis. I'll go first here. I think you kind of mentioned it in your other award, but my God, Ferrari, you just don't want to listen to your guy sometimes. Guy who's out there, who senses the grip, knows what his car can and can't do. Why are you not listening to your number one? You've clearly made the decision. You're clearly telling Carlos Sainz Charles Leclerc is number one. So treat Leclerc like a number one and let him make the call there. Yikes.
I know, because I just will also give this to Ferrari because I can't help myself, and it's just a disaster, an absolute disaster.
Yeah. But I will say this, as bad as the Saturday was, they made it work on Sunday. So I guess I'll give them a half of off for that. But the Saturday thing is
and
crazy.
Give Sainz a shout out for not pitting when they told him to.
Stop inventing. Yeah. Long live. That's the best radio transmission I've heard in the last few years. All right. So we will move on into the dark horse. And I think this is universal. If I could give him driver of the day, I would. But Alex Albon in the Williams, best finish in 3 years for them. Long time coming. Great way to make it work. Good use of the updates. Williams maybe back up into the midfield. We'll have to see. But I mean, they did everything they had to do in the right order to get this result. So good on you. Good on you, Alex.
I'm going to go in a different direction with this because I want to put someone else somewhere else. This is a stretch, but I'm going to go with Alonso here. I think that gap did come down to Red Bull. And I mean, imagine if they were only 5 seconds behind and then you jump about 10 seconds and then he would be 5 seconds ahead. If the gaps were closer, this would be kind of a much bigger deal. I think these upgrades on both the Aston Martin and the Mercedes, but also kind of nursing a couple issues still to finish with a decent amount of a gap ahead of Hamilton, only 10 seconds behind Verstappen. That's honestly a good day at the office. So that's
all right.
Where I'm going with that.
All right. So I can assume I know who your driver of the day is. We'll let you go first.
I just have to put Alex Albon. I know where everybody else would go with this, but I'm just sick of it. So Alex Albon, I think, kind of driver of the weekend, especially that Q2 on Saturday and the race, making that strategy work. And I mean, he put the hard tires on lap 12, and to go for the rest of the race with cars that are typically much quicker to keep them all behind. Great work, Alex Albon.
Yeah, it was it was astounding that these are the softer compounds that you're here anyway, but there was no cliff. I kept waiting to see when is that cliff going to get there, and either Albon just managed it or it never came. And these Pirelli guys, they give you all these stats about what they think the tires are going to do, and I'm shocked more teams don't try this. Like, this used to be the Pink Panther strategy of just put a guy on a set of hard tires and let him stay out there. And, he's P4, P5 throughout of it. And he gets a safety car. He gets a result out of it. And it's amazing more teams don't try it that way. And everybody was just comfortable with saying the tires were not, when they were graining, that they didn't want to push through it. So, yeah, I think Albon is a perfectly good candidate here. I kind of have Max in my agenda, but you've convinced me. I will go Alex Albon for driver of the day here as well, because why the hell not? But I mean, we all know Max is kind of pretty much unbeatable right now. The bird didn't even beat him, and if that doesn't do it, I don't know what else is going to. Maybe some sort of mechanical thing in the car, but but I mean, Alex's drive again, sublime. And great on you, Williams. And to your point about James Vowles, I think they finally found their guy. I think that's the guy that's going to take them. You're going to see Williams make some big strides in the next couple of years, because they got a guy who can see, is okay with talking about it, and is okay with acting on it. And that's all you really want from a team principal. So I got good feelings for Williams moving on.
Yep.
I hope Logan Sargent stays on for him to see some of the results of that. But we'll have to see. All right. So we'll get into prediction results between Cody and me. Cody's been taking it to me the last couple of weekends, and he has continued to do so. He finishes this weekend with 4 points. He got the pole sitter of Max. He got the qualifying time because he went slower than me. The freak rain shower. I was doing quite well until that freak rain shower at the end. He got Max on the P1 podium, and he gets the overall fastest lap time. I finished the weekend on 3 points. I got the pole sitter. I got P1 on the podium. I got the fastest lap driver. I got Checo for that, but my time was not good enough. So Cody has now taken a 10-6 lead in our Choose Your Champion predictions game. I got to find out what the next finishing move is in the Mortal Kombat stuff, because I'm getting my butt kicked right now. All right. So we didn't get a chance to talk about this, since we've already kind of gone off one tangent. We talked a little bit about IndyCar. We had a big old race a week or so ago as I was driving home. That would be the 24 Hours of Le Mans, the 100th anniversary of the race. It definitely was a crazy race early. Lots of wrecks, lots of freak showers. You want to talk about Canada having freak showers? The Sarth circuit certainly had its share of freak rain showers that caused a lot of damage. Saw lots of body work getting repaired and taped up and all sorts of stuff. But in the end, not the guys you think would win. It was actually Ferrari. James isn't here. He's got a Ferrari win, and he's not here to celebrate it. James Calado, Antonio Giovinazzi, and Alexandro Paraguidi were the three drivers who ended up taking the win over the Toyotas and over the Cadillacs, the Ganassi Cadillacs, right? Or am I totally wrong on that? Okay. It was against the Cadillac team was the third place.
I just love I didn't actually watch it, but I just saw all of the tweets around it. My favorite thing is that the Alfa Romeo lineups for, I think it's over a course of a few years, but it was the Leclerc, Ericsson, and then Giovinazzi and Kimi Räikkönen. So Kimi has a Monaco win, Gio has a Le Mans win, Ericsson has an Indy 500 win, and then there's Charles Leclerc.
Oh no! Oh no!
So
He's taken
Yeah.
the Monaco pole. That's something.
And then didn't start the race.
uh,
Yep.
maybe he'll get there, but
One day.
yeah, I mean, I think from just the race aesthetics, from the parts I did see, you saw kind of like what you want to see on TV. Cars were very close to each other throughout the race. You really, depending on who was cycling up and who was cycling back down, and if you could keep it on the black stuff long enough, there were lots of wrecks. I thought kind of the fact that it was a 24-hour race kind of did its thing. Usually, I mean, we've had Le Mans where there's been like 2 retirements. This one was full of a lot of retirements, a lot of big hitters going out from the big teams. The number, oh, I'm going to forget. One of the Toyotas I know wrecked and was out. The Ferrari who took the pole was actually out of the race in the hypercar class, and of course you've got the other classes throughout it, which was interesting. So we talked about kind of the weather, lots of safety cars. Apparently that was a thing. First time they were kind of trying out the old Daytona 24 rule where you could kind of get your lap back if you were behind a safety car, but that seemed to took like a half an hour to get the field lined up. So they will tweak that procedure, I'm sure, moving forward. But another big story, if you're a fan of America and America NASCAR, was Jenson Button and Jimmy Johnson proving that a NASCAR can turn right. You throw a bit of wing fairings on the side of those cars and you leave that engine tuned up, and damn, 1,000 horsepower sounds good.
Yeah, this was the one thing I kind of tracked. I was shocked that they were faster than the GT cars, just because like in a normal I guess this car was more tuned to this kind of a thing than a typical NASCAR is. But like watching like the Cup Series go even around like the Roval and stuff is just kind of comical to watch sometimes. But so to see them actually outclassing these like Ferraris and Corvettes and all of this stuff is just fun to see. It was interesting little experiment, and I think ended up kind of being a good commercial for Chevy and NASCAR and the whole thing.
Yeah, and they played it up. They did I thought a really good job with that. And it was fun to watch, and it was fun to like. It actually looked like it belonged there. Yeah, and clearly the sound was very different to a hypercar or any sort of hybrid or anything like that. But good on the Garage 56. There was talk of maybe making that into a class in and of itself moving forward. That maybe that could be something that they do. To have a class, 8 or 10 of those cars in their own little race. So, we'll have to see what ends up happening. But another big Le Mans fan is our buddy John, who's unable to be with us tonight, but he had some thoughts on it. And he was like, it was probably one of the weirdest days of his life because it was the first time he had to cheer for Jimmy Johnson, the French, and Ferrari in the same day. And he says, in all seriousness, though, it was an incredible race with some crazy condition. Glad to see the NASCAR boys represent themselves well. Yeah, I think we would all agree. The only bit of meh to kind of even throw on it, I hate to throw water on what was a fun event and looked like everything got pulled off really well, was, nobody talked about, because they couldn't, the big balance of performance and what they ended up kind of doing to the poor Toyota team. And whether or not you like Toyota or don't like them, I mean, they've been the dominant force in WEC for a bunch of years. But I think the BOP added something like net 17 kilograms to them to slow them down. And they were still in contention for the win. So would you have had this competitiveness with or without it? It proves that this is still a young class of car. There's a lot of development that's going to happen. I do think there will be convergence as everybody gets more on the programs and gets some experience with it. I think the future of sports car racing in general between both IMSA and in WEC is very, very stable. And it's looks profitable. It looks good. And who would have said that 5 years ago? So, we talked when the Indy 500 was around. We wanted to talk about Monaco, obviously, when it was here. And now we're talking about Le Mans. The Triple Crown races, I think, all have their own places, and we've seen people in pursuit of it. So yeah, I mean, I thought it was a fun race. and good thing to watch, and a long, obviously for 24 hours.
Definitely a long one. You can always
Yep,
count on that.
yep, that's true. I always make it to like when the sun comes up, and then once the sun comes up, I always pass out, no matter how hard I try. Like it's always that, whether it's Daytona or whether it's Le Mans, it's always the same part of the night. I can't make it past that.
If I watch it, I got the first 2 hours and the last 2 hours.
Yeah,
And
okay.
then whatever happens in between, I'll catch highlights.
But I will say, kudos, they had like all the big broadcasters were there. Alex Jakes was there, who does F1. Lee Diffie, who does IndyCar in the US, did a stint. All the big sports car guys were all there. So I mean, it was a who's who, both on and off the track. So good on you, Le Mans.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I guess that's our cue to kind of wrap things up. Dee, any final thoughts? We're finally done with our weird part of the schedule. Now we're back into Europe. We've got 2 weeks, and then it's the Red Bull Ring and the Austrian GP. Any major thoughts on this weekend and moving forward?
Let's hope we get something a little bit more exciting next time. Maybe there's some upgrades and some things happen, and yeah, we shall see.
I've always said, right when you think F1 isn't going to give it to you, something weird happens, and it's usually here. The Red Bull Ring tends to throw a bit of a double sixes at some teams, and we'll see what happens with that. We may have weather, who knows, but we'll be back not this weekend, but this next weekend, next Wednesday. Cody and I will be back. We'll be doing the preview, and we will be here for the rest of the Red Bull Ring weekend, and then we get into the Silverstone weekend, and then I think it's like 2 in a row, and then a break, and then Hungary, and we'll figure out the schedule. But anyway, we've got a whole lot of stuff coming.
Be here.
Yeah, we'll be here for it all whenever it comes through. So, Dee, thanks a lot for hopping on tonight. Yeah, we'll catch you guys within about a week or so's time for our RBR Ring preview. And yeah, as always, may all your laps be fast.